Here we have the parts to a articulating pole for a Kestrel box. The materials are pretty simple, not much to them. This is the design by Mr. Tom Comfort, and it's two 12-foot 2x4s, one 8-foot 4x4, and the necessary hardware, 2 bolts, and a Lazy Susan hardware for mounting the box to the 2x4. And there's the box, and that's about all there is to it. Well, screws for the Lazy Susan hardware, yes, right here. First step is to take one of those 12-footers and cut it into an 4-foot piece and an 8-foot piece. Then take the 8-foot piece and make a slant, cut off a little bit to make the box easier to fit, and we'll show that when we get there. The pivot brace is sawed at a slant at the top, so rain will more likely drain off instead of just sitting there and soaking in. Okay, here's where we attach the pivot brace, which is the 4-foot piece, to the pole brace, which is the 8-foot piece. This is the bottom right here, and you'll notice that it's extending 24 inches beyond the pole brace. 5 screws, equally spaced apart, 3 or 3.5 inch long screws. The pole itself is attached much to the braces, much the way the braces were attached to each other. We have 10 equally spaced 3.5 inch screws, although 3-inch screws will work fine. This is the piece of 2x4 that the box is actually going to be mounted on, and if you notice, the top is beveled, so rain will shed off instead of sitting there and soaking into the wood. The identical gap down here is on purpose to fit the 4x4 that's going to go into the ground. The next step is to take the 4x4, slide it between the brace and the pole. It goes up 1.5 inch short of the 2 feet that you have, and then drill holes for the bolts that'll be holding the 2 pieces together. The hole up here is 2 inches down on the 4x4 and 3 inches up from the bottom of the 2x4s over here. Probably the trickiest part of the whole operation is mounting the Lazy Susan hardware to the board and then to the box itself. The way I do it, and if somebody has a better idea, I'd love to hear it, is I mount the Lazy Susan hardware square to the board, thusly, and it's mounted with wood screws into the 2x4, into the pole itself. But before I do that, I pre-drill the holes to mount the Lazy Susan hardware on the back of the box itself. I use the front of the box to mark for the holes because of the low amount of leeway you have here. To be sure that you get it right, you have to do it from the front. Anyway, mark the holes, and if you'll notice, it's exactly opposite. You're going to be drilling holes here, and these corners here in the diamond sort of configuration. Once you've drilled the holes in the box, you can go ahead and screw down the Lazy Susan hardware, again, as I say, square to the board, so that way you can match up the holes, these holes, to the holes that you've drilled in the box. Bring the box up and lay it over on top of the Lazy Susan hardware, and then take the screws and put them up through the box. Through the Lazy Susan hardware first and into the box. And as I say, it's a little tricky. You don't need a washer underneath here because of the fit of the hole onto the head of the screw, but you do use a washer on the front side of the box. Here's the Lazy Susan hardware mounted to the top of the pole. It's also, if you look closely, you can see that it was greased with bearing grease before it was mounted. That way, hopefully it'll extend the life, and the box itself will be mounted on this hardware. The last step, once you have mounted the box onto the Lazy Susan, which is done with 4 bolts, as you can see here. The last step will be to drill a hole and put a rope down so you can keep the box level as you tip over the pole. Now, the most important trick when you start installing the Kestrel box poles is to get somebody else to dig the post hole. Use the post hole diggers to dig a hole. We're using an 8-foot 4x4, so we want the hole to be approximately 4 feet deep, but if you're in something a little more solid than sand, it doesn't necessarily have to be that deep. Certainly over 2 feet, though. Put the pole in the hole, and then you put sand back around it, and then this process of tamping it down is very important, or the pole won't be solid at all. Your helper needs to hold the pole where the holes will align. You put the pin that you pull for pivoting in the bottom. As you can see, it's already put through, and this is one that gets pulled for when you're rotating it to put it up and down. And then you raise it, and you put a pin through there that stays there as you raise and lower the pole. We're just about done here. Tighten them up a bit so they're not going to loosen on their own, and the install is complete. Here's one of our Kestrel boxes on the top of an articulating pole designed by Tom Comfort, and we're going to demonstrate why we like these poles so much. Very easy to take down. You just, your rod, if you go over there and pull out the pin, it's just the half-inch bolt there at the bottom. You pull out the pin, and you get the other helper to grab hold of the line that goes up. And if you remember, the box is actually mounted on a Lazy Susan hardware, so as Rod pulls over the pole, Betty's going to hold on to that string and keep the Kestrel box vertical. So if there's eggs in it, the eggs won't be rolling around because it's full of nesting material that keeps the eggs from rolling. And every year we go by and we clean these boxes out of the old nests and whatever else might have collected in there. Rod's holding it there, as you can see, but if you think ahead and bring a 4-foot piece of wood, 2x6 or 2x4, you can just kind of rest it on 2x4 while you clean it out and refill it with fresh nesting material. The nesting material has been added and the box closed up, and this is just how easy it goes back up. Yeah. Get it back vertical, put the pin in, and voila, you're pretty much done.